All right, everyone, welcome back to today's episode of Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Cardin from Georgia Northwestern Technical College, PD. Say that 5 times fast. He has been in law enforcement for 28 years. He started straight out of high school. He has been married for 23 years, and we all need the secret sauce for that. He has a daughter, and in 2018, he started a PD from scratch. Welcome to the show, Chief Cardin. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Okay, so one of the things that stuck out to me in your bio that I really appreciated is that you shared a little bit of a personal note that you've been married, you have a daughter. Sometimes I think, and I think about this for myself too, when people ask me to send bios, I
Hmm.
always just send like the strict professional, like these are my
Hmm.
accomplishments, which I think are important, but I love to like peel back that layer a little bit and to get a little bit of an inside view into who you are outside of the profession. And I think if we're going
Hmm.
to talk about wellness and, humanizing the badge and all these things that are kind of topics for conversation, it's important to understand that you also have a personal life. And it seems to me like it's been a very successful personal life to be married to someone for 23 years. So, what is your secret to a long and successful marriage, especially with the stressors of this career?
Well, I don't know. I just wait for her to tell me. And no, I'm kidding. No, she's great. First and foremost, I just uh, I don't really know what the secret sauce would be. There's a lot of I guess you would say concessions both ways because man, she puts up with a lot. Late nights and all that stuff in her earlier career. But I will say what probably helped us is, she was in the military. Um, so that helped a lot because she was in the military right after 9/11.
Okay.
And we had to deal with a lot of that. She never got deployed, thank God, but there was those times. So we just had a firm understanding from the get-go, and we just clicked. I don't really have a secret other than don't sweat the small stuff because at the end of the day, it's small stuff. you
Yeah.
know. But she's great. I don't I don't really know what the secret is. It's just man, it goes back and forth, right? You got to have that concessions.
Mhm.
You got to have compromise. That's the big thing is compromise.
Yeah,
So
I agree with you. And I think the biggest thing I've learned through my life, and I have not been perfect at all in relationships, but in my current relationship, it's a team,
hmm.
and I love that you said that there's give and take from both. And how
Yeah,
can you come together as a team to build that strong foundation?
yeah.
And the not sweating the small stuff, that's something I struggle with a lot. And
Hmm.
my fiance was like, he says those things, he's like, in the grand scheme, when we look back, is this going to be a big deal or is it just a big deal in this moment because things are
Hmm.
elevated? And so I always have to remind myself of that, of like not sweating the small stuff. What's important? Are we a team? And so I love that you said that it's a partnership and that you
Yeah.
guys, but then the other thing that I heard from you that I think, and I don't know if you meant this, but I heard this is gratitude for your partner.
Hmm.
And you're like, wow, like she's been through so much. Like that's having gratitude for the sacrifices that she had to make in the relationship. And I'm sure she feels the same way about you. And I think if we can always look at
Yeah.
it from that lens of like, are we just so grateful to have this person as our partner? And I think that helps to be kind of the North Star when things are really challenging to
Hmm.
recognize, the good and having a positive, grateful mentality.
Yeah. Yeah. She knows when I text and say it's been a bad day. She knows to just give me my space.
Yeah.
If it's been a good that that's back when I worked patrol full time at and on night shift. If I say hey, it's rough night, she's there.
Yeah.
So
And you
it's
have
she's a good one.
Good. And you have a daughter. So
I do.
you have a 15, 16-year-old.
She will be 16 in less than 2 months, and I'm scared out of my mind because she's just as pretty as her mom. So dad's got a lot of work to do security wise. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I know. We're talking about kids right now, and I'm like, Oh man, like if I have a daughter that was anything like me, we're in trouble. I'm scared. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, I heard the stories from my father-in-law. He's since passed, but he tell me the stories about her growing up, and I'm like, oh my God. Oh Lord. But she's been great. She's very school focused, very art focused.
yeah.
So hopefully she won't be an issue.
I love it. Well, again, thank you for sharing a little bit about the personal side.
Oh yeah.
So in 2018, you started a brand new police department from scratch. And
Yes.
in speaking with you, you said that was one of the most rewarding things that you've done in your career. And so I
Hmm.
want you to maybe give us a little bit of insight into how you got started. What does it take to build a PD from the ground up?
Well, the first thing you have to do, just let's go into a little bit of history first, is with my prior agency, I was deputy or assistant chief there, and we had a contract with the local technical college to help with security for that facility. And about a year after they built, because it was a brand new campus that they just built, they decided that they were going to um, start their own police department. That all the technical colleges would eventually have their own. And I saw an opportunity to apply for that. I'm like, man, that would be cool to be able to do that. Um, because around Atlanta there were a few agencies that popped up. Sandy Springs, Milton, all of those were getting started. Chattahoochee Hills, and I was like, well, man, this hasn't been done since the '70s in our area. Wouldn't it be cool to have your name attached to that? So I applied for it and I got it, and then the now I got to do it. So it's kind of like we got to figure out how to do this. So um, I sat down with the administration of the school, which super supportive in everything that we wanted to do. Um, Luckily for me, we had a couple of my former administrators that I worked for at Fort Oglethorpe PD that were hitting retirement,
Mm.
and they were going to take their pensions. And so I called them and I said, "Hey, I got this police department we're starting. What do you think?" And they're like, "Sign us up." So we put the
Started
positions
recruiting
out.
right away.
Yeah, bam, right away. So I knew they had the know-how. I knew they knew budgets. One was a former chief. The other one ran his department during a lull without a chief. He was a captain. That was 60 plus years of law enforcement just in those first two people. So we got those guys hired on. Within a month of me being here, we got our paperwork from the state saying, "Yep, you're a police department." And then it was just building from there. And we all sat down once we hired the first two or three of us. We sat down and I said, "Let's set the tone now. Of what type of agency we want to be," because we'd all been in those agencies that either they didn't have a good stable footing, or they every 18 months you wind up with a new chief, and the whole mission of the school or mission of the police department would change. And I said, let's just set the tone immediately of what type of agency we want to be. And we were we first and foremost said we see an opportunity here to have an agency where guys who's got their 25 plus years in that want to get off frontline patrol, now they have a place they can go to slow down
Mm.
and try to, I say, reimmerse themselves into society, but it is a thing. And that's how initially we started. We had a few guys that were in law enforcement, uh, that were working security jobs for the school. One of which was a police officer in France. That he was a French national, and he's still with our college today. He's actually a director of a department in the school, but we he had when he come over, he put himself through the police academy here once he got his citizenship, and he come to work for us, and he worked for me as a police officer for a year, until he finished his education. Um, but we had to find a way of acquiring vehicles. We had to find a way of getting communications put together, and it was just a slow process over those first 2 or 3 years. And to this day, we're less than a month away from 8 years, and every day it's something new to where you see an opportunity to change something and make the police department a little bit better as you go.
Love that.
But one thing we had to that was a challenge for us, and we still see it, is when we first came here, people legitimately wanting to know you, wanting to get to know you, be friends with you, because anytime, we came from agencies that if somebody approached you wanting to do that, you were always guarded. It's
Mm,
just a natural thing that police get into is, what angle are you playing? Um, you're just naturally guarded. And when we came here, and to this day, when we get hire somebody in new, we have to tell them, hey, this is how it is here. People here legitimately want to know you. You're not going into the negative all the time. A lot of times when people call you and want to talk to you, it's over something that's not bad, or
mm,
they just want some advice or something like that. So that was a big challenge. But building the police department, equipment wise is always going to change, but people wise, we wanted to know we had a desire when we first started of what type of people we want. So
mm,
we stick pretty strongly to that. When it came to the leadership and management of the department, I knew what we wanted to do. I did not want to micromanage. I did not want to. I wanted to have a relationship with our officers here. I didn't want to be that chief, and I didn't want my supervisors to be the people that supervised and managed from behind a door. The doors were going to be open. It's an open line of communications from top to bottom, and I personally think it's been successful. Uh, 8 years later, um, we have 10 full-time officers that work here, and we've kept those full-time positions filled. And honestly, in the 8 years of full-time employees, we've only technically completely lost two out of that. The only full-time positions we filled in the last year or so have been new positions that the school's given us, and
mm,
we filled them quickly. Um, we have about 25 to 30 part-timers. Part-timers kind of come and go as their full-time schedule changes. We can't really help that. But even the full-timers we had, they either drop down to part-time or they get promoted to somewhere else in the school. So very proud of that.
I love
From the get-go, we've been able to keep our employees, and that's when you have the same full-time team for 3 to 5 years, man, that's an accomplishment nowadays, and just happy to have it. So
I love that. Thank you for sharing. And there's a couple things I wrote down that I definitely want to kind of circle back to.
sure.
One of the things that I find to be really interesting is the color lens that we see things through.
Hmm.
And when you said you had to kind of tell people, hey, like if people talk to you and they
Hmm.
want to get to know you, it's genuine. But maybe
Yeah.
we have that lens of like, w why are they doing it? What are they trying to accomplish? Like, what do they want? And I was just having a conversation with some of my friends who are not in this space at all.
Hmm.
And we talk about this on this podcast a lot, like the importance of having a community outside of what you do professionally, especially for you guys in law enforcement, having friends
Hmm.
that aren't cops. But I was telling her about a situation and I was like, and it was very much on the line of like, I don't trust what's going on. I was like, I don't know. I'm like, this could happen, this could happen. And I was listing like all of these things that could go wrong. And I was like, am I crazy? Am I like seeing this in a different way? And they were like, first of all, no, like it's okay to, look at these things. They're like, but because of the work that you do, because of the conversations you have, because of my past, life experiences, they're like, do you see things through a different color lens because of that? And I think the answer is yes. And I think it's really important to have people who say, hey, like it's okay. It's not like these people don't want to hurt you or harm you. They don't have like ulterior motives here. They really genuinely are just trying to get to know you and talk to you and have someone be like, you got to kind of change the color in which you're seeing these things
Yeah.
sometimes. And I find that to be really interesting. And when she said that to me, I was like, whoa, like, am I guarded? Like, am I distrustful of, this particular situation or this particular person because of my past experiences or because I know what can happen? Or is it genuine? And I think you have to
Yeah.
be able to kind of have those conversations and differentiate that sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. We call it code yellow here. You know, it
Code
was always
yellow.
the way it was trained to us was, at least back when I went to the academy many years ago, it was stay in code yellow, always be aware of what's going on. And they always used to say the old adage, and it was some general that said it, but, uh, you know, be polite to everyone you meet, but have a plan to kill whoever you meet. And it's like,
Mm,
man, that's a hard way of looking at things in life. But you know, that's the
yeah.
way they trained us back 20 something years ago. And it's just not true. Not everybody's out here to hurt you.
Yep.
Um, you know, you want to be aware of your surroundings, but take a breath. Because if you're
Yep.
like that all the time and that hypervigilance stays up all the time, it's going to be that much more difficult when you need to come down off of it, you know?
100%. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and I think having these conversations, it's an important reminder, are we constantly guarded? Are we constantly in that state? Are we looking for problems that aren't there?
yeah.
Like, yes, be aware, yes, be safe, and we all know the situations where like maybe that high alert is necessary.
Hmm.
But in certain situations, if you're having a conversation with someone, maybe not a
Yeah.
time to be on high alert. You said that you learned when you started, you wanted to set the tone and
Hmm.
you had learned some good things to do and maybe some things that you wanted to do differently. What were some of the things that maybe you had experienced previously that you wanted to either implement into your existing agency or things that you wanted to do differently when you were starting out?
Well, the leadership role, uh, from the get go is I had a I had a couple of good mentors that I worked for that said people don't quit their jobs, they quit their managers.
Mm,
And I said, well, then I don't want to be a manager. You know, I
yeah.
you know we're in this together, so um, it doesn't matter if you're the guy that's the part time guy that works twice a month, or you're my assistant chief. If you've got an idea, bring it here. Hear it, because there were times I would work where you'd have an idea and take it forward, and instead of saying, yeah, we'll look, let's look at this, and sit down and go, okay, this is a great idea, but here's the flaws in the plan because it doesn't fit here, here, and here. You would get ridiculed. That's the stupidest thing I ever heard. No, we're not doing that. Why would you even bring this to my desk? And instead of that, I would say, let's sit down and look at it. And I wanted to be also be that guy that, um, really look out for the well-being of your people. Um, for instance, we had an I wouldn't call it an incident. I had an instance one time when we were hiring for a full-time position, and I had a guy that worked part-time, and he really wanted the job, but he had a full-time job at another agency, and I had to explain to him. We sit down, and I don't know of any chief that I know of that's done this. I'm sure there's been plenty, but I actually sat down and went over the numbers with him. I said, okay, how much do you make at your current agency? And at the time, our pay was even lower than it is. It's much lower than what it is now. And I said, okay, this is how much you make at your current agency. This is how much a full-time spot makes with me. But this is also how much you're already making on your part-time job with me.
Mm,
So what you need to understand is you're going to lose all of this money, and you're going to lose a third of what you're making at your full-time job to come here full-time. I said, I'll give you the job, but you need to understand, you got a new kid, you just had a new baby, your wife's not working right now, you got this going on. It's probably and at the time, I think he was a year and a half to 2 years away from vesting in his retirement
mm,
at his full-time job. And I said, man, all that time you're there, don't, don't, don't let that 10 years go if that's what it takes to vest in your retirement. So I wanted to make sure we were looking out for the employee as well.
yeah.
I didn't want to be the chief that's just, uh, and I hate to use an example, but there's at least one manager out there I know of that looks at his people and goes, if you don't want to be here, don't go, leave. If you want to work here, fine. And I just don't want to be that person. So that was setting the tone right off the bat. Was I want to have the officer's well being in play. I wanted to know what was going on in that officer's life uh, as best we can. But I also, and this is hard to say, but when I set Gary and Steve and Kayla and all them down, which those are my guys that work for me from the get go, I said, don't be afraid to come in here and look at me and go, Chief, that's the stupidest thing I ever heard, and this is why.
Mm,
I said, but if you do that, be prepared to back it up,
yep.
right? Because I have found where those people that will come in and debate you, if you can justify why you're doing what you're doing to them, it makes it 10 times easier when you got to go to the administration to do that. And
Yeah.
we've been very successful with that. Anybody can come into my office and sit down and go, Chief, I got a problem. And this is with what we're doing, and this is why. And I'm not going to be retaliatory about that. It's
Yeah.
going to be, okay, well, let's sit down and talk about it. Maybe we can come to a compromise. Maybe you've got a better idea, and that's happened a couple times where that officer's had a better idea. And I go, you know what? We need to look at that. And we've done it. So that's when I set the tone, it was more, let's be employee oriented. Not only do we serve our constituents here and our stakeholders, but let's let's make this a fun place to work. Let's have fun.
Yeah.
And I think we've been successful.
I like that a lot. I have you heard of a book called The Conscious Parent?
I have not. I'm sorry.
So I think we can learn from other industries, we can learn from what's working really well in different areas, right? We don't have to stick like strictly with, you know, law enforcement or wellness. And there was this section in this book where, and I promise I have a point and it's related to what you just said. But it talked about how, as a parent, you want to be there to guide your kid rather than like control your kid. And they
Yeah.
give this example, kind of like a ship. It's like you're there on the ship with them. You're setting them up for success. You're there. You're like helping to create the foundation, telling them like maybe not to look in the rear view too much or not to look too far, towards the destination because you're going to miss the dolphins, just understanding that, the wind is going to take you, the waves are going to take you, but how can you help to guide, and it's obviously talking about it in the context of parenting, but that's what kind of popped up in my head as you're talking is like, as a leader, how can you be there to guide your people in a direction that is positive and joyful? Being able to see the dolphins, like you said, have fun, like see the things that are really cool about the job that you do and not maybe look so far in the rear view and
Yeah.
not look too far in the future, but like how can you be there with them? And it goes back to like that team mentality rather than this like I'm,
Yeah.
above you controlling everything that you do. And so that kind of popped in my mind. I was like, man, it's like so aligned in what you just said.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's been my experience outside of here that you got to let your people make a decision.
Mm,
Um, if you're in a position where you have to tell this person every single decision, if you're building a culture of um, they have to call a supervisor every time to make a decision or something like that. Number one, they probably need to rethink their career field. And then number two, that supervisor is not helping that person. They need to allow them to make a decision. When it comes to this line of work, let them make their decisions. If it's the wrong one, most of the time it can be corrected. But if you don't allow them to make a mistake and have to justify that mistake, or if you don't allow them to correct that mistake, and all you do is get on to them when they do make a mistake,
yeah.
uh, when it comes time to make that big decision, they're going to fail to act. So
Hmm.
they need to be able to understand that, hey, I know I can make a decision, and if I make a mistake, they're going to help me to correct it. They're not going to jump down my throat about it. It's going to be, hey, you did this wrong. Let's go back and fix it. Okay, we understand how we're going to do that next time, right? Cool. It's not a. I've seen it both ways, and it's just when you breed that culture of having to call a supervisor or something to make even the smallest decision, it's just a breakdown, and you see morale collapse, and you see turnover, and the agencies where people are allowed to make a decision or they're guided properly, um, you you don't see as much turnover in that department. So
Yeah. It's more of a mentorship approach. And I
yeah,
think that we have to, because it's been hard for me in my career too, to let go of control. I think that like a lot of times, the people I talk to, very like type A, like, want to do everything. Like
yeah,
I definitely was that way. Like when I was a kid, I was like any group project, I'm like, I'll just do everything because I'll do it the best. Like that was always
yeah.
kind of, how I grew up. And being able to have people that work with you and not only I would say, of course, like they want to feel valued. Everyone wants
Oh
to
yeah,
feel valued. But I think that like you have to build their confidence that you trust them. But then when that happens, they begin to trust themselves. And I think that once they trust themselves, they start to build more confidence in what they're doing. And it's this kind of like snowball effect that happens. And there's no way that they're going to have that confidence in themselves if you don't let them do those things. So it is,
yeah,
it's challenging, especially when you're used to doing everything yourself or, having control of the situations. But I agree
yeah.
with you. I think that it makes for a more collaborative environment, and other people do have better ideas sometimes. Other
They do.
people like do, and to be able, I love how you said like to be able to say the why, for them to come to you with an idea with the why, you're also able to explain the why. I think that that really helps too, because then there's that full transparency, there's communication, there's collaboration, and then that moves everything forward from there. But I think for anyone who's used to being in control of everything, that can be
Yeah,
a challenge. But I think that it's really positive.
yeah, yeah. Rarely when I make a decision is it my idea.
Yeah.
Typically, it's something that I've plagiarized from someone else or got from one of our people. And the one thing I've realized though, but if it's something all the guys like, or all your officers like, or you see it makes a difference, give the credit where credit's due.
Yeah.
Don't just make it to where it's your idea and say, "Yep, I did this." If it's your people that did it, say, "Hey, thank that person. They're the ones that got this pushed through."
Mm.
And and if it's not successful and it hurts, well, you're the chief.
Yeah.
Take responsibility for it. Say, "Hey guys, I'll take responsibility for that. Let's back up and punt." Don't throw your other person under the bus.
Mm.
That's uh, something I had to learn. When I first in 2012 when I took over as patrol captain in my last agency, the buck stops with you. You're the chief. So if it's a bad idea, it stops with you. But if it's a good idea, somebody gave you that idea. So give that credit where it belongs.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so funny. Like I'll talk to, my friends that are like executives in their companies, and
Mm-hmm.
something bad happens and I'm like, well, whose fault was it? And they're like, ultimately mine. Like it's my
Yeah.
company, it's like at the end of the day, it's my fault, and do you think that everything we just talked about, I know we talked a lot about leadership and,
Mm-hmm.
leadership style and, how you want to make it about them and you want to create this culture. Do you think that that is the definition of servant leadership? We talk a lot about like these like kind of like buzzwords that everyone says, but is that what it is?
That's a piece of it. I think that you know I've told them plenty of times, and I've had to force my hand a couple times of when they couldn't get a shift covered or something like that. I'm like, hey, I'm a grown man. I'm here. I can do it. And I would pick up an evening shift or, um, when you're out on the range, you help them pick up brass when you're done on the range. I
Mhm.
hate that, but you got to do it anyway. I think a lot of it, servant leadership, you have to be also an example.
Mm.
I don't have a secret Chiefs training day to go to the range. I go to the range with my guys, and if I struggle, I struggle. But you know what? I got a plenty of those guys out there that's gonna say, "Hey, Chief, try this. Hey, Chief, try this." And I think that that's part of the servant leadership as well, is setting an example that you're just as capable as they are, and you're not going to ask them to do anything that you couldn't do yourself.
Yeah.
Goes back to that golden rule, right? Treat unto others. Uh, as you would as you want people to treat you, but at the same time, you got to set that example.
Yeah.
So I feel big on that.
Thank you. I did want to talk about the one other thing that you had mentioned, and this was the idea of the people that you wanted to bring into the organization. You had
Hmm.
a really unique opportunity to kind of start from scratch and to,
Hmm.
pick, the people that you wanted to work with you and who you thought would be a
Hmm.
good fit. There's maybe two parts to this question, but one, were there certain qualities that you were looking for that were really important to you? And then you also said that you guys paid less than other organizations. So when you were hiring,
Hmm.
well, and I'll put a caveat to this because I don't know if you said this. Oh, you did say this earlier. You said this to me offline too. You pay less, but you've had full staffing, like across the board. So people are choosing to work with you and you're filling positions really quickly. So,
Yeah.
one, what qualities were you looking for when you were hiring? But two, why are people choosing to work with you when you pay less? Like what are they looking for in an organization outside? Because it's not monetary. There has to be something else that you're having these conversations that are important to the people that you're
Yeah.
hiring.
So I'll address the pay thing first. One, we're not the lowest paid. We're kind of hitting in the middle.
Yeah.
So we're I think for the job that we do, I think we're a state agency. So I think the governor and our president have been very and our TCSG and our directors and our commissioner, they've all been very generous to get us where we are now. Um, so we're not at that bottom rung like when we first started. I mean, they've done a great job getting it where it needs to be. Uh, we do have outstanding benefits with our department. Uh, so it's we're on state benefits, so we have state health plan, and we can choose between two retirements. We can do the employee retirement system with Georgia, but then we also have teachers retirement, which is a pension, and that's the gold standard in Georgia, and my guys can get on that. So that's probably the best retirement in the state. Um, but we've had guys that's on ERS because they came from other state agencies to come over here to work, so they just continued what they had.
Mhm.
Even our part-time guys get a retirement, which is rare in this state or rare anywhere in Georgia of getting a retirement. So depending on how many hours they work, is depends on what type they fall on. But we do have that as a benefit. Um, we do pay our part timers well as well. They make comparatively to other part agencies that have part time. We pay pretty doggone good. Um, as for the same benefits that any other agency's got, you're looking at, we have assigned vehicles for our officers, our full time people. They have all of that. But the cool thing that we do have is we are a school. So if it's a snow day and we close school, my guys can come out for a little bit, check the school, and then they can go home. If we're out for 2 weeks for Christmas and New Year's, I got a couple of part timers that come out and check buildings, but we're home for our Christmas and New Year's and Thanksgiving and holidays and all that. We get that off. There's not another agency that can do that unless it's another college or another, like here, Board of Education police is getting real big. So your school districts are starting to build their own police departments, and they do that. So they get 5 weeks off in the summer. So we can't do that, but we definitely have a lot of benefit when it comes to scheduling, and that has allowed some of my guys to pick up. Uh, they'll work their 410s or what have you. Well, they still get 3 days off a week, so they'll take a day or two, go work a part-time job somewhere else, or they'll start their own business. They'll have I think one has I don't know exactly what it is, but it's a deprivation business where you have hunting's real big in our area.
Mm.
So he has a business where if you have an invasive, something being invasive on your property, he helps that. Pest control, I guess the best
Yeah.
way to say it. Um, but we've got plenty of people that do that, and instead of just making what they're making with us, they're making substantially more than they could have made staying in another agency just by being able to pick that up on the side and still have 2 or 3 days off a week. So that's been very beneficial for us as well. Plus, um, you're not out in 100-degree weather directing traffic on a crash in the middle of the rain and risk getting run over. You're not working nights in -5-degree weather. So it's a clean environment. And like I said earlier, you're not getting inundated with trauma call after trauma call after trauma call like you were in your prior agency. And that's something for, like I said, around here. And I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. So if I get ahead of myself, just let me know. But in Georgia, I can talk for around from my experience. Retirements have not always been what they should be. Um, at least for local agencies. It's been 401ks. It's been, certain areas like that. There's one or two agencies that have pensions, but a lot of places have gotten away from pensions. And there's a couple of good 401ks out there. And there's some other agencies that have good benefits. But ultimately, you have to stay in that job for 35, 40 years in order to have something to retire. Um, we are in a great position here where you can invest in your retirement after 10 years. And once you hit the age of 60, you're out. You can go. So if you get that guy that started when he was 18, 19 years old, and he's put 25, 28 years in somewhere, he can come here or he can come to one of these technical colleges across the state. There's 22 of them. Go to work there full time and build a pension under the teacher's retirement, along with the peace officer's annuity benefit, and have an opportunity to go from wide open every day to a step down and still be in law enforcement and step down. And maybe, just maybe, when he retires, he can enjoy it for a few years before he passes.
Mm,
Because it's always been a big deal in, the running joke. It's not really a joke, but the running thing of, police officers, once they retire and it's an all stop, they don't last long after retirement.
yeah.
So this allows for that step down to get them where they need to be so they can actually enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and what I heard and what you said is quality of life.
Yes.
Like as a recap, it's like, how do you, and you said this earlier about, people leaving the career early because of the stressors organizationally, not
Mhm.
necessarily out in the streets, but then also, you kind of explaining the uniqueness that you guys have as an organization to create more quality of life, maybe more time with family. And then kind of as that like transition period, so it's not like a cold turkey. That's kind of what I heard.
Yeah.
Instead of like cold turkey, like you're done, your badge doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
Like maybe there's an opportunity to continue to still feel like you're a part of the profession as kind of like a wind down period.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
ultimately, I heard quality of life. And I heard this throughout the entire conversation, as maybe
Yeah.
one of your goals is how can you create an environment that people have fun, they want to be there, they have time for their family, um, they create more of that longevity for themselves so that to your point, when they do finally hang it up, they have years left in them.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and as an anecdote, you talk about quality of life. Now, I'll go back to my wife. Um, I rarely had Christmas off the entire time I was on patrol. And when I went to work Ringo PD as the assistant chief, she was like, "Oh man, you're actually going to have some holidays off now." I said,
Thanks.
"No, honey, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to work and I'm going to let my guys go off." Uh, that's something that you let them go home for a little while to be with their kids.
Yeah.
So that was big for me.
Yeah. Taking care of people.
Yeah.
My last question for you is for the younger generation. I know that we all have those moments of, like And I don't think for you in this case it was an I wish. It was, you were paying it forward to your people. But I think that we all kind of look back and we learn things. We have lessons throughout our lives and our career that we can pass on to other people in sort of a mentorship role. So, for that younger generation, what words of advice would you share with them?
First and foremost, um, don't let the job consume you. Find whether it's a hobby, preferably a hobby that can make you money. Find something else you can do that can take your mind completely off of it. I did not do that. I wish I would have. Um, Take control of your own retirement and finances, and find an agency that fits you. Because I look at myself. I started with a sheriff's department, and after 4 years there, before I went on the road, I learned that I didn't want to serve civil papers. I didn't want to do evictions. So I pursued a city PD. So take control, find the place that fits you. Um, Take control of your own retirement. Always put into your employer's retirement, but start learning finance. Start learning how to invest your money in annuities and things like that, and take control of that. Because if you have that freedom, the stress of the job isn't as bad. So take control of that. And when it comes to the job itself, police with your heart. Not everybody's got to go to jail. Not everybody deserves a ticket. Um, if they do and they earn it, write it. But you know, police with your heart.
Mm,
Don't be hard.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your
Thank you.
time. I really appreciate you coming on here with me today.
I appreciate it.
Of course.